The San Francisco 49ers offense has a tell that'll let you know if they're going to be rushing the ball or if they're going to be passing the ball. Now, not on every play. There are some plays where this is the case. There are some plays where this is not the case. But there is something very interesting that I do think that teams should definitely try to do when they're playing against this team. It's not something that's like crazy out of the ordinary. It's something that you've seen teams do before, but there's something very interesting that I think I'll just show you. So, like on this play, what San Francisco is going to do is they're going to have their left guard and left tackle double team an interior lineman. They're also going to then send up a fullback, Kyle Juszczyk, to block another Packer who's in the area. And now, so there are going to be two Green Bay players in that bottom half of the screen who are unblocked, but the San Francisco 49ers, they're not going to leave those two guys unblocked. What they're going to do to get those blocks is just pull two players over to that side of the field to make these blocks. Relatively simple play, nothing too crazy. It's something they do a lot, and it ends up working out pretty decently well. They get a pretty solid run. It goes for 5 yards, you'll take that. And so that's something that they do very frequently. They pull players over to make sure they can get those blocks. But there's one thing that they do not do. They do not pull players over when they're running play action. Every single time that they run play action, they do one of two things. The first thing is this. It's going to be zone blocking as opposed to they're going to pull players over. So while they will run the ball on zone blocking from time to time, actually it seems like more often than not when they run zone blocking is actually they're going to have the zone blocking concept, but they're going to run play action through it. So like on this play, zone blocking to the bottom half of the screen. If you're a little unclear of that, what that is, you can kind of see once the play develops. I've explained it in more detail in different videos, but it's not really that important to know the actual details of it right now. But just you can see very clearly right when the ball is snapped what'll happen. But anyways, the way this play is going to work is that it's going to be play action, a little bit unorthodox. They're going to run play action with a jet sweep motion, and then to have a receiver running over the middle, which is ideally when you're running play action, you want to hit over the middle. So this makes a lot of sense. And take a look at what happens right after the ball is snapped. First things first, you'll see that it is zone blocking, and then Jimmy Garoppolo, he makes a throw. It actually isn't complete, but they did clear out the area, and that's kind of the way it works. Again, I'll show it a couple of times so you get the idea. But that's basically what San Francisco does, is when they want to run play action, that's usually the way they'll run play action, is by just doing it in zone blocking. They never do it, and unless there's a couple plays that I just missed, which I mean, I've watched every play that the 49ers have played multiple times. It still is possible that I've just seen a couple examples of that and just missed it, but I have not seen San Francisco at all pull guys over and run play action. Most teams don't do that. That's kind of why. I mean, there are a couple. Carolina does it. There's a couple, but mostly you will not do that unless it is just a running play. Because obviously, if you do that in play action, that could result in somebody being able to run right over and hitting the quarterback instantly. The one other way they will run play action is with this. I believe I've broken down this play before. I believe I broke this play down immediately after we talked about the Vikings, losing to the 49ers and the Niners advancing to then the NFC Championship game. But the way this play is going to work is that it's going to be a man coverage play with a linebacker covering the middle of the field. And so to get him out of position, San Francisco will run play action, have a receiver run over the middle. That's the way this play is designed to work. But watch the offensive line, and they're just going to traditionally block. No run blocking whatsoever. Nobody is attacking anybody. They're completely letting the defensive lineman run to them, not the other way around. However, if you look at the Viking who is in charge of covering the middle of the field, he's still moved in right now because, he saw the play action. Maybe it's a handoff. I have to make sure I move in. But now this will give Garoppolo a small window to try to hit the receiver who's past him. There wasn't much of a window, but Garoppolo makes a perfect throw and they're able to get a touchdown on that play. Now, what I would actually recommend, and again, this is easier said than done, a lot easier said than done, but what I would recommend is that you don't look at Jimmy Garoppolo or the halfback, you look at the offensive line. It could result in you getting fooled a little bit, but basically you have to look at both for the most part, but make sure you take a glance at the offensive line, especially if you're a linebacker or a defensive back who's just in a position where he could make a stop on the run, because if you look at the offensive line, you can then quickly tell if it's going to be a passing play or a rushing play. If you see somebody is getting pulled over, then you know instantly it's a rushing play. Don't worry about the passing. Just make sure you stop the run. If you see that it's zone blocking, well, then it could go either way. So then, no real advantage there, but you can still have a pretty good idea that it might be play action, and there's a good chance it would be play action. And then if they're just straight up pass blocking, then you know it's play action, so then it's drop back. But like this play is a great example of that just not happening, where it's against the Saints game and it's going to be a cover 3 zone. And then for San Francisco, what they're going to do is relatively simple play action, have a receiver running a pretty deep curl route. So, he'll run deep, the linebackers will move in, this will widen that gap, and potentially San Francisco can try to make this play. And so, what is the blocking concept? That is the key thing to watch here, and it's going to actually be a zone blocking concept to the top half of the screen. So this can let you know that there is a very good chance that this is going to end up being a play action. This is probably not going to be a rush. But the key player I want you to take a look at is going to be that New Orleans Saint right over there, because look at how far he runs in, just in case it is a run, but you don't have to do that. I mean, for one thing, you were already so far out of the way on this one that you were never realistically going to actually be able to make a play on the run, so you should just stay back. But also, you should know that if it's zone blocking, there's a good chance it's play action. They oftentimes will run play action off of zone blocking as opposed to, a regular traditional block. They really don't run block and then run play action. They don't do that hardly at all. Again, they might be saving some of that for the Super Bowl, but it seems unlikely. I wouldn't bank on that. I would definitely say zone blocking, let me stay back. But here, he's just taking himself out of the play. Garoppolo is easily able to make that throw. There's just such a wide gap at that point. That's just too easy for the 49ers. And again, when there is kind of that tell that San Francisco has, I do think that's what you should do. And this isn't San Francisco specific. You can pretty much always tell what's going on by watching the offensive line as opposed to watching the halfback or the receiver or, the quarterback. But it is a little bit more so of San Francisco, especially just because that's kind of the downside of when they pull guys over so frequently. I mean, that first play, when they pulled 2 players over to the other side of the field, they do that all the time. I mean, I made videos, countless videos, talking about how they love to do that. It's a lot of fun, but the downside is it basically tells you that they're run blocking right there. So use that to your advantage. The key to beating San Francisco, quite frankly, it's not going to be how fast you are, how talented you are. Of course, that'll help. But the key to beating the 49ers offense is your IQ. It's your football IQ and your awareness. It's understanding what's going on, understanding if it's going to be a passing play or a rushing play. And little tricks like this is how it makes it a lot easier to know if it is going to be a rush or a pass. And that can turn those plays where Garoppolo throws over you and they get 20 yards to maybe Garoppolo tries it anyways, but you get back, are able to leap up and get an interception. And honestly, that could be the difference in the Super Bowl. I mean, like, watch. Even like a play like this, a jet sweep, where it's going to be a jet sweep, this Deebo Samuel, and then what they're also going to do is then have 2 players on the top half of the screen. It's actually a tight end and a fullback are going to both go out to block those 2 Bengals. And after the ball is snapped, you look at those 2 Cincinnati players, even after the handoff, they don't know what's happening right now. Because part of that is because Jimmy Garoppolo is great at not giving away if it's going to be a handoff or it's going to be a passing play. He does a great job at making sure every time he hands it off, and every time he runs play action, he does basically the exact same thing. So he doesn't give you a tell in that regard. But the offensive line does. I mean, look at the offensive line on the top half of the screen. Notice how you can clearly tell this is a rush. So at the very least, start running in, if nothing else. Cincinnati waited way too long in that, which was part of the reason they were able to gain a few yards. It actually wasn't a great play by San Francisco, but, it was an okay play. And listen, what San Francisco did on that play was they sort of faked as though it could be a pitch or jet sweep. So this one's a little bit different because you don't know if it's going to be a run to the top half of the screen or the bottom half of the screen. But you know at that point it's going to be a run in one of those directions. So get to the outside and try to make a play. And that's what Cincinnati actually did an okay job of doing. Their players on the edge did. The linebacker and the safety that I talked about earlier didn't do a great job at that. But, that's what Kansas City is going to have to do is basically just try to have a wide glance, try to look at everything, try to not just look at the quarterback, but look at the offensive line too, because they can tell you a lot. A defensive lineman will tell you, an O lineman can't lie. They have to do what they have to do. If they're pulling over, then they're pulling over, and that it's going to be a rush. If they're run blocking, they're run blocking. If they're pass blocking, they're pass blocking. And it becomes even more so when it's a team like San Francisco that does run so many creative run blocking concepts. Well, if you look at the blocking concept, then you can kind of know where the ball is probably going to go to. Again, all of these are easier said than done. It's not like now that you know to look at the offensive linemen, you're going to just easily be able to shut them down every play. But at the same time, it definitely does give you a bit of an advantage, I think, and can help you out in certain situations. But that's just my opinion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.